In this podcast, we chat about the defeat against West Brom. We look ahead to Bolton and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Avenelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Avenelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dana, and our guest for this week, Matt. And we have the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And Middlesbrough have suffered their worst start since 2003-2004 with 1 point from a possible 12 in the Championship table. Guys, as always now, what is your one key takeaway from the game? Dana, do you want to go first?
Yeah, my one key takeout is that I just really don't like the start of seasons. Like, I really, really don't. Because again, we've stumbled out of the blocks and really struggled. And I'm seeing the same sort of reactions as last season. Or the manager might walk. Steve Gibson should sell the club. We need more leaders in the team, or the recruitment team are crap. And I'm just a bit numb to it now, to be honest. I do think this team will improve markedly, and I do back them to do so still. But in the meantime, I'm kind of just over it now. Like, why can't we start the season strongly, and then if we fall off a little bit later. But why can't we just start the season strongly? It would make things so much easier, especially online, where it kind of becomes a bit of a toxic cesspit, to be honest. But yeah, I don't like the start of the season. Can we just skip to the good part, please?
Okay, then Matt, obviously welcome. Nice to actually have you on. You know, from the graphics to the podcast now, promotion just keep getting better and better.
Yeah,
like you'll be a host next time. How's it
going for your gig,
yeah.
Jonny?
Yeah, he's coming for my gig. Yeah, people already are. So, Matt, what is your one key takeaway? What do you think?
Pain, really.
Nice.
But no, just frustration, really. That a bit like what Dana said, we just seem to really make life more difficult for ourselves than it really needs to be. Making silly individual errors, gifting goals to the opposition. And I think Mado might have said this on Tees, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. We had improvements and promising signs last week after Huddersfield, and I kind of thought, you know what, yeah, it's Huddersfield, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and we were better, and I thought it's only going to really be worth it if we back that up against West Brom, and we just see that progression, and to just kind of, I don't know if it's take a step back, but to just see us again, just like gifting goals to the opposition and making really bad errors and effectively losing a game we really shouldn't have lost. It's just really frustrating, and I'm just waiting for us to kick into gear, waiting for us to progressively improve across a couple of games. And a bit like what Dana said, I'm just waiting for the season to properly start, and it just hasn't yet. So just frustration, really, is what I'd say.
Yeah, and I don't think we've really had a good start to the season since probably Tony Pulis era. And I don't even want to remember that, to be honest, because that was painful to watch. But yeah, pain, is probably the word of the day, really. Just painful, like how we've been able to throw games away, and like we'll throw games away to the opposition. We're not really giving too much away in terms of chances. Teams aren't really breaking us down in terms of like cutting us open, getting them behind, and creating good quality chances. But we just give them away anyway. So, I mean, that's kind of where we are at the minute. But I think key takeaways, we just need to be better off the ball, and that will come with time. We need to maybe press the team better. We need to be better in the transition. Our pressing from the front is getting better. It's a lot better than what it was last year, but our midfield is still the problem. We haven't been able to break down teams. I don't think Howson and Hackney are fantastic defensively, but Howson's good enough. But we need to step up, I think, from that. I think we need to bring some to really fill that void, and maybe another centre half as well, and just try and get a bit better of a spine as we move into September onwards. But let's move on and chat about West Brom then, because we did make 2 changes to the side. You know, McGree came in and Smith came back from injury. I thought he was going to be back a way later. Then he actually came back, but you know he was sent off halfway through, so it probably wasn't ready. But there was no Martin Piero either. There was no Hayden Coulson. The rumours obviously they could potentially be going before the next week's out. But Dana, how would you assess the performance against West Brom? Bad, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you know what? It was just another game in a long collection of games of Boro assisting their own defeat. And it was even more frustrating because despite being 2-1 down, we were well within reach of leveling things up and we just hit self-destruct. We really did. And to be honest, I could kind of gauge the general makeup of the game within the first 2 minutes because Boro were quite content, even happy to a degree, to allow West Brom possession of the ball in dangerous areas, in pockets of space, inside the 18-yard box, just outside, between the lines, on the flanks. And in the end, I'm not surprised that the way that we conceded that second goal, where John Swift just dribbled his way through our defence and unleashed a shot and got himself on the score sheet, because we were disengaged him within the opening exchanges and we disengaged in the build up to that goal. Nobody really tried to close him down. And when you see a player like that just dribble his way through a defence, it's really, really frustrating to see. The first goal is whatever. The second goal, we allowed that to happen. The third goal, we gifted them. And then the fourth goal, we just got picked off because we tried to press. And because of the man disadvantage, they bypassed that and managed to score that fourth. I'll credit West Brom because I think that they were better than I thought they were going to be based on browsing the forums before the game. But they weren't good value for a 4-goal scoreline. And that ultimately is the issue. You know, again, the key takeout of the game, or another key takeout of this pod from that game, is that we're just gifting so many sloppy goals. This isn't just a problem from this season. It was the case last season as well. And it's just, you pull your hair out thinking, how can we keep conceding these types of goals and consequently throwing away, or not necessarily throwing away because we never had the game anyway, but losing games because of those mistakes is just really frustrating.
Yeah, I want to chat about an opposition and them creating chances, and we'll talk about XG in just a moment. But Matt, where do you think the game was won and lost? You know, we talk about game state quite a lot. Things happen and that change and that causes a reaction elsewhere. But where do you think the game was won and lost yesterday?
I think we just made a rod for our own back. I think we were beaten by ourselves. I think it was a 2-2 game maybe, and I think in transition when we're being counter-attacked on, I think our midfield's non-existent. I'm not really sure the structure or the shape, what we're trying to do when we're defending. And that coupled with individual errors is just a cocktail for just, yeah, it's just obviously only going to bring bad results, and it's going to leave us in a position where we're going to have to outscore teams. We're going to have to maybe score 2 or 3, maybe even 4 if we're going to win games like this, and we don't quite have the firepower to do that, I'd say, so far this season. So I think you look at the first goal, I don't think it was a foul. I think that's maybe a debatable thing. I know a couple of people think it is, a couple of people isn't. I don't think it was a foul. I think it was soft. And then, yeah, you look at the second goal, midfield's non-existent, no one engages. Third goal was a gift. And I think the only goal of quality they really scored was the fourth goal. So, yeah, we've been beaten by ourselves. We've, like Dana said, pressed the self-destruct button and essentially gifted goals and gifted another result away to the opposition and we've made the opposition look better than what they were. Obviously, you've got to credit West Brom, but we've made them look better than what they were, a bit like when we played Coventry, and we've made ourselves look worse than what we probably are. So, yeah, I think the game was won and lost by Boro, and probably Boro themselves just shooting themselves in the foot again.
Yeah, and I think the underlying numbers really suggest that, don't they, as well? When you look at like the XG of the game, and we talk about XG and say, well, basically, really is just like the quantity and quality of chances that like an opposition team creates. Yesterday was 0.62. Boro beat them in the XG, so we are creating the chances. We're just not putting them away. But they had a 0.62 XG yesterday, scored 4. Matt, why do you think we just keep leaking these goals? Do you think it really just is that individual error side of things, and we're just because we're not. It doesn't really seem that we're getting picked off too much, does it?
No, I was looking through the goals we've conceded so far this season, and I don't think we've conceded even a handful of goals that were actually of any quality. I don't think a team has had to really carve us open at any stage, has had to, play really good football to get through us, or have looked anywhere decent. I think we've been unfortunate in a couple of instances. I think the Huddersfield goal was unfortunate. I think a couple of the goals at Coventry were unfortunate, albeit I don't think the result would have changed. But at the same time, I look at the West Brom game and I kind of think we got ourselves back into the game at 2-1. It was a great response. And you're going into that second half thinking, right, we're only a goal down. Yes, we've gifted the opposition, but we're still in this game. And you're thinking, right, we can get back into this. We could even win it, because last season we saw Boro could, in the second half, in a matter of minutes, blitz a team, and we could come from behind and win a game like that. Because I would say West Brom weren't great, and we're not there for the taking, but there was a result there for us. And we play a really bad pass back, give them a goal. So we've instantly gifted them the 2-goal lead back again. And then on top of that, we then go and give them a man advantage as well to just make the task even more difficult for ourselves. So obviously it's not intentional, but we're just making really silly decisions and just making life so much tougher. And it is eerily similar to the start of last season when you looked at the data and we were creative going forward, not putting the chances away. We weren't conceding high quality chances, but we were just letting goals in left, right, and centre. I just can't put my finger on it really, why it's happening again, like last season. I'm hoping it's going to follow the same trend as last season, and we'll kick into gear at some point, and it's all going to be rosy at the end of it, and we'll look back on it like we did the Wilder season the Wilder time of last season, and think that was all just a bad time. We can look back and laugh, but yeah, at the minute, I'm just puzzled by this football club and just the goals we keep gifting. It's hard to make sense of, really.
Yeah, it is hard to make sense of. I mean, when you look at how we were last year, and the parallels that we're seeing are really interesting. And I think that when I look at Middlesbrough's shape and how we set up in games now, we're definitely playing with a flat back four for most of it, instead of playing with maybe a three and trying to create the space up for the wing back. We're not doing that as much anymore. We're trying to play a bit more narrow, and that creates different opportunities for teams. So the football is like a game of chess at times, isn't it? Where you'll make one move, the opposition will make another move, and that's where these things will. There's never a solution for everything, really, is what I'm trying to say. So it's quite difficult for Boro at the moment, but we've made changes. We've lost what I'd say 66 goal contributions, really, when you look at Archer, Akpom, Giles, and Ramsey. And obviously, you don't mention like the players like Stefan, who was a big contributor to our side last year. Alex Mount was really, really good at the back few games. So we've lost a lot of quality. We've brought players in who, so on paper, like they look good, but personnel's different. They're different people. They'll see the game in a different way than what Ryan Giles would, what Cameron Archer would. And it's just trying to maybe adjust the side to what we want it to be now and trying to get the best out of them. And I think Carrick has to tinker with that for the next few weeks. Next few days are massive for us to try and get that going. But like, Dan, like, how would you think, like, if we are still going forward, like Matt alluded to it there, like, an XG of 5.7, we scored 3, an X, like, goals against, it was 4, and we'd actually been, like, so going forward, we're 10th best for best XG. Goals against, we're actually 19th. So in terms of, like, actually goals against, we're actually quite good in terms of that front. Hull are actually top of that. They've actually XG against, they've looked like they're going to concede a lot of goals this season, probably, looking at the data itself. But why do you think Boro found themselves just in the position that they're in? Like, what do you think the solutions are for this, like, defensive errors that we've got?
Well, I think we find ourselves in this position because we can't defend in the moments that we need to. There is an element of misfortune, as Matt has alluded to. We've conceded 2 on goals. There was fluky goals at Coventry as well, for example. But I think it's quite seemingly straightforward to attack Boro. The best window of opportunity for an opposition is immediately after we lose the ball, because we're out of shape and we lose the ball, and more often than not we concede possession in really dangerous areas. So I think a potential solution of that is to maybe have one of the 2 midfielders sit and protect the back line, maybe even switch it to a 4-3-3. I don't really want Boro to change system necessarily, but if we maybe go with a 4-3-3 and have a number 6 and then 2 8s and have the 6 maybe when we are when we're out of possession, somebody that can potentially slot into the back three, create that 3 at the back, just a little bit more protection, because at the moment a lot of runs are being made off Howson and Hackney and it's a problem. They're very good going forward, they're very good on the ball, but do we necessarily need both of them to be in advanced areas of the pitch? I don't think we do, because the way that Rani McGree plays, he has the position of a number 10, sometimes an advanced 8, and so he roams in central areas. He can potentially do that defensive work, but I think we don't really need both Howson and Hackney in advanced areas of the pitch. They don't always do so. Sometimes one of them sits a little bit further back or one of them advances. It's usually Hackney that's advancing this season, but I just think we need more protection, because when we lose the ball, we are incredibly vulnerable, and we don't have the high-end championship attack where we can pretty much hang our hat on saying, that's fine, you score 2, we'll score 3. We can't outscore oppositions anymore because we don't have that attacking contingent. So maybe we do need to adapt, and maybe the route of adaptation is to just try to shore things up at the back, give ourselves a good defensive base, and then work from there. It might not be as fun as last season when we were gung-ho in attack and we could outscore teams. We just don't have that personnel anymore, so maybe we do need to just adapt that and maybe put a sitter in there just as extra protection.
Yeah, and I think that's what Boro will probably do in the window in the next week. I definitely feel like we need a ball playing centre half as well, which will help us in possession. I think sometimes with Fry and Lenihan, it's just we don't take advantage of the runs that are being made going forward. We like to play a little bit safe and hold up possession and try to play through the thirds. But sometimes that ball's just on, so just give it a go to try
And
and
they're
do
not being
it.
pressed. Then there's
Yeah,
a lot of time within games where they're not being pressed. It's not until we then progress the ball into midfield that we get swarmed on at times. So it does give the opportunity there for a diag. And I think we saw that from Lenihan yesterday. Pinged a really good diag over to Silvera, but we don't really see that often enough. The output from the centre halves, I think, probably does need to be better when we are in possession.
We definitely do, and I think just that defensive midfielder as well would probably, even if we move to like a 4-1-4-1, I feel like that in itself would probably help us a little bit more instead of like that 4-3-3. But yeah, I think last season was a little bit different where we would try and create space for Giles. This year we're trying to play really narrow, so when we do get transitioned against, we've got the bodies there to try and win the ball quickly back and then get them on the transition again. But it hasn't really worked this time yet. The underlying metrics say we're quite good at winning the ball in the final third, but I think there's probably more to it than that, to be honest. But Matt, if you were Michael Carrick right now, you're looking at the defensive things, you're looking at the solutions and how can we improve. Where do you think you would look to try and improve things for on a defensive perspective?
Well, I actually think going into the final week of the window, I actually think that arguably the most important position we maybe have to fill now is in midfield, because I'm kind of looking at what's going forward, and I'm accepting that no matter who we bring in, we're probably not going to score the same goals we scored last season. And I think it's irrelevant no matter what we do going forward at the moment if we're going to concede 2 or 3 going the other way. So I am looking at Hackney and Howson and feeling like we do need to change something up in the midfield. We need to give the centre backs more protection, because if we've got a left back bombing on, which is what Engel's been brought in to do, you've obviously got the midfielders going forward as well. You've only really got a right back and the 2 centre backs there, and they're just so easy to get at. And we've seen how easy it is for the other opposition to just bypass Boro's midfield. So I don't know if we could tweak the system so we have a midfielder who sits more in front of the centre backs, and you maybe have just either Hackney or Barlasser allowed to go forward, or we maybe do go with a 4-3-3 at least out of possession. So we do have a sitting midfielder, and then maybe whether it's Howson or if it's someone else, and then you have Hackney and Barlasser or whoever else in front who are allowed to express themselves. But yeah, the more we're getting close to the end of this window, I am actually starting to think that a strong central defensive midfielder to protect the back four could be actually more important than a striker going forward. Obviously, we want to get both in. We want to get as many goals into the team as well. But I think it's irrelevant what we do going forward if we're going to continually be as open going the other way. So that's probably what I'd lean towards right now, which is weird because a couple of weeks ago, starting the season, I wouldn't have really given much consideration to a central defensive midfielder. But I think looking at us now, I think that's probably the priority position for me, at least.
Yeah, it's quite ironic that Michael Carrick was a defensive midfielder and arguably one of the best, and that is where our biggest problem is.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. What it is. It is what it is. But I think let's have a look at the key moments of the game then from yesterday. Obviously, then that first goal, obviously that changed the complete state and narrative of the game. Anyway, Mado was adamant in commentary that it was a foul. What do you think? Because it looks like there is clear contact. He's put both arms on his back. There is movement. Do you think it's a foul though?
Not for me. When Maddo was talking about it, I felt like I was missing something because he was very adamant, wasn't he, that it was a foul. Maybe I need to recalibrate my glasses. I don't know. But I was searching all over the screen. I was like, where's the foul? And then I've clocked on and I was like, I'm not so sure. But I will say, to be honest, I actually lean towards no, but I will say that I was watching their highlights, West Brom's highlights against Swansea from a couple of weeks back. And I felt like it was a rerun of one of the goals from that game, because in that game they had Darnell Furlong long throw. It bounces around in the box and then they score from it. And so as soon as I saw Darnell Furlong loading up that ball in his shirt for that long throw, I thought, here we go. And one of my questions, I've started asking questions that will find their answer at the end of the game in my podcast notes. And one of them was, how will Boro defend set pieces? Because West Brom have scored the most from set pieces this season. That one, there is a factor in there that, is it a foul, is it not? I personally think that it isn't. I don't know. I just think it's very soft. And if that is a foul, you're setting a really weird precedent there that I just don't think is necessarily welcomed in football, where you could probably argue that a slight tap on the shoulder is a foul. And I just don't think it's strong. It's a strong enough claim for me. And that might be really controversial. I've seen many shades of opinion on it, but for me, it's just not a foul.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you as well, Matt, if you thought it was a foul or not. But I mean, you said you agree already, so I don't need to come to you now about that. But I think Howson could have done a little bit better then in that situation than Matt. Like, what could he have done? I mean, it is some sort of contact, but it's not much.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, arguably it was a bit of a mismatch.
It was.
I don't know if I buy into the, well, Howson could have been stronger because Kipre, he's a big centre back. So I'm sort of looking at it and I'm thinking, I look at set pieces and I'm thinking, well, players pull and push and tug and jostle for position on every corner, every throw-in. And I'm sort of I'm coming at it from the angle of, well, if that's a foul, you probably could give a foul at every corner, because there's more contact going on between attackers and defenders on most corners. And you could easily give a foul on every set piece. But then I'm also looking at it and thinking, well, Tommy Smith literally put his arm around the shoulder of Matt Phillips, was it, and got himself a yellow card.
That's
I'm kind of thinking, well, if that's soft, then, or that's a yellow card, then maybe it is a foul. So I don't know if it depends on the game state or where it is on the pitch or the reaction of the players, the appeals of the players. I really don't know. But I think maybe Mado and others have come at it from the sort of perspective of the rule book, and that, well, 2 hands on the back is a foul. But when I looked at it in real time, I didn't really notice much of a push. Like I just didn't notice it really in real time. I think maybe if you slow it down, then everything looks like a foul when you slow it down and the more you look at it. But I think in real time, if you're the referee, I just don't see enough of a foul in there. So I personally think if it was a foul, it was a very soft one at that. So I agree with Dana.
I think if it was a foul as well, though, I would like to see Jonny Howson go for it a little bit more, and say he's performing in Broadway and doing Macbeth or something, just falls to the floor. Just
the thing is, though, he can't, can he? With the new rules, he can't.
Yeah,
because he'll get booked. True.
Still commit to it though. You got to commit to it. You got to give it 100% in those moments. I think really own it.
He's too
bad
honest.
back. bad back, get the stretcher on, all that kind of stuff, get the magic sponge on, just go for it, Jonny. That's what I want. But obviously, as the game progressed as well, the second goal as well, they're playing it from the back of West Brom, and then they're able to beat the press. Like Emmanuel Latte tries to press the play through him, and the second ball from Swift, he finds himself in a nice little bit of pocket of space behind Hackney and Howson, drives and goes to score. A lot could be better. Before we get back in the game with Emmanuel Latte, and we'll come to him in just a moment. But that third goal, Carrick's probably spent about 15 minutes going, guys, look, we're in this game. Keep it nice and tight 15 minutes. Don't make any mistakes. We then pass the ball back to the centre forward, and he goes and scores. But I just want to say to Engel as well, look, these mistakes definitely happen. But when you watch the game back, there is literally nothing on apart from that goalkeeper in that moment. But at least look. I mean, I'd rather you just turn, just give the ball up for a throw in, if there was nothing truly on. I mean, yes, you are giving a long throw away, but again, I think it's just a mistake, and I think Billy Boro fans should get on his back, because I think for me, he's been quite solid the last couple of games from what we've seen. He's playing more defensive role than he did in his previous club, but his crossing looks really good, and I think just it's a very small sample size. I think he looks like a good find as well. But Emmanuel Latte will probably deserve all the credit, because I thought his header was great yesterday. The ability to create chances is also very good. Boro is still in the game though, Matt. We are 3-1 down, and then a red card happens. I kind of want to break them down into 2 yellow cards, because the first yellow, was it a foul and was it a booking? And then secondly, I mean, he has to go. But do you think it was deserved, really, the red card in total?
Well, I actually missed the first yellow card, so I can't comment on. I don't even know what happened with the first yellow card, because I completely missed it. But what I will say, if you are on a booking regardless, you can't give the referee a decision to make. And I feel like, going back to what I was saying earlier about West Brom's goal, it maybe is one of them where it could be given. I've maybe seen instances where that kind of tug on a player isn't given. But at the end of the day, I feel like when you're on a booking, the referee's right there. You're giving him a decision to make. And we're already, 3-1 down. We've gifted them 2 of the 3 goals, arguably. And it's not like he's running in on goal. He's going to run down the wing, but it's not like it's to save any real danger. I think we could have recovered the situation quite easily. I just don't understand what went through his head and why he chose to put himself in that position, because he's just given the referee a decision to make. And unfortunately for us, on this occasion, he's obviously chose to send him off, which is, to be fair, I still think we did pretty well after Smith went off, in all honesty, but it obviously doesn't help. I think we've lost him for, is it the next game? I don't know if it's Bolton or if it's the next league game, but yeah, it wasn't a good return for Tommy Smith. I was actually really happy to see him in the starting 11, and I couldn't quite believe the performance he put in, and the second yellow card was just silly for me.
Yeah, it was. Now, obviously, the game's changed. Middlesbrough do pull one back. Marcus Forss, the handsome Finnish striker, scored a lovely penalty, and then we were killed off right at the very end. But in the post-match, Carrick said he was actually really encouraged by the display in some moments of it, and with what the players are trying to do as well. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on the pair of these, because do you share the optimism as well, or do you see the positives that Carrick's trying to say, Dana?
I share the optimism generally, but it's difficult to really say so after yesterday's game, because it's a repeat offence from Boro to hit the self-destruct button. We saw it so many times last season, but we were able to dig ourselves out of a hole. We're seeing it this season. As I said at the top of the show, I still think that this team will click and that they'll improve very much, but it's just difficult to hold the optimism quite highly after yesterday's game. And it's a shame, as Matt said at the start, yes, it was an improvement against Huddersfield, and as Tom said on the last pod, if it wasn't for Lee Nichols, we probably would have got 3 points out of that game. But you can't follow up an improved performance with that, because it just doesn't it doesn't stick with fans. You can't take one step forward and 2 steps back. There we go. Saying that again, it feels like just a repeat of last season. So it's frustrating. I do hold the optimism. I do see it because I think we do have talented players. They don't just lose their ability to play football, but there's just a lot of teething issues going on right now that need ironing out ASAP.
Matt, what do you think?
I see the positivity and I see the encouragement. I see it in spells at least. There's certainly periods of the game where we're looking neat, we're looking tidy, and I can, even though personnel's different, I can see the same Boro side from last season. I can see what we're trying to do, and I can completely see when we click, not if, when, that it will be great and we'll probably score goals and we'll look a decent team again. But obviously, and I think Dennis hit the nail on the head with that point, it's hard to take that as a credible opinion when you've just showed improvements last week and then you've completely sort of went against that and have sort of regressed a little bit and the same things are happening. I think if fans are seeing progression and seeing these mistakes ironed out, you can kind of get behind that opinion. But when we're sort of, as you say, taking one step forward, 2 steps back, people are sort of going to look at it and say, well, you're not really seeing the fact that we're still making the same mistakes. We're not improving on the last performance, at least. And obviously, I know Carrick's, and I'll back Carrick, and I'm encouraged by what he says, and I agree with him. But obviously, it's going to give a certain corner of the fan base a stick to beat him with when they just see these quotes, probably without context, and just go in on him because they just think he's blind to what's actually going on. So I personally agree with him, but it will probably rile the wrong fan up the wrong way at the same time. So it's a tough one, really. I agree with what he says, and I appreciate his honesty and his positivity and how he's always glass half full. But I can see why certain fans will just use that as a stick to beat him with over and over again when we don't get results.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I think everyone wants us to win every game, and that's very difficult to do. Like obviously, progress isn't linear, is it? You can always go forward and take a step back to some extent. But I think just going forward, we do look a lot better than what we did probably in the first maybe 2 league games. I think the last 2 games we've created actual chances. Emmanuel Latif is a massive bonus up front. We just need the players to click around him, and I think he will score goals. I'm very excited by Latif, to be honest. And for every game that we've had this season, I think pretty much every game we've had this season, we've pretty much bettered the opponent in all the underlying data, but the actual one that matters, we haven't really done it. So it does show that there is real positive signs to some extent, but we are giving a lot of negatives on the other side, which is costing us in the main table.
Can I just say
you're gone.
Could I just say on like the attacking point that you mentioned? Yesterday, obviously, we had Silvera on the right and McGree on the left, but Silvera, being a right-footed player, was cutting in on his weaker left foot, which I just thought was odd. And then the one time that he didn't, we scored from it because he went down the line, he went on the outside, he whipped a good ball in, and we scored from it, and it was a good header from Latif. We haven't really mentioned that goal so much because it's been submerged by the shit show that was the 4 goals that we conceded, but I wanted, and Maddo was saying it on commentary, just go on the outside more. Everything just came central. But, Silvera is quick, and he was up against Eric Peters, who is not. So I know that's a very simple thought of aging fullback against a very quick winger, but he just kept coming in central, and then he was coming into the condensed areas of the pitch, and I wanted to see him attack the outside a lot more and put balls into the box because Latif has good movement, and I think that we probably would have got a lot more opportunities through that route. But yeah, just a nugget of thought there.
Well, absolutely that. I think he just needs the service and the players around him to give him the opportunities. And we've shown that he does get himself into good positions. He's able to, he's got his first goal now. I'm hoping for many more. He probably could have scored against Huddersfield, probably should have. But overall, I think he's been really positive. And as for Silvera as well, I agree. He is cutting in. I don't know why he's cutting in too much. But let's have a look at his stats at the minute. What is it? 3 goal contributions in 5 games, 1 goal, 2 assists. He's contributing but how can we make a contribution to even better? How can we improve that even further? And that's where you're probably coming there, Dana. Can you stay wide in those certain moments? Can you try and drag players out wide? Can you try and
Yeah.
just create different areas? And I think that's just something that you need to work with over a period of a season. Like, he's only been in the building for what, a month, maybe. He's played a certain way for a couple of years. It takes time to adapt to these things, but you know, the positive side of things, at least he's contributing to something right now. But how can we be better at the next thing? But let's move on to the praise and place. Let's keep it positive, because we've been very upset over the last 30 minutes. But the praise and place is the place where to give praise to a player, a coach, a staff member, a fan. Dana's toy SpongeBob, and also Matt's beautiful, beautiful hair and face. But guys, on the Boro breakdown shirt
I
as
was
well.
going to say the shirt, but yeah, I'll take the hair.
I'll take the shirt. I'll take the shirt. Matt, I'll come to you first. Who's in your praise and place this week?
I'm going to put Let Laugh in. I'm going to follow up on what you've just been talking about there. I'm really excited by Let Laugh, and I've kind of gone from being not questioning whether he can be the talisman or our main goal scorer, but I'm actually starting to really see it now, and I think he's got great pacing behind. My jaw hit the floor when he was played through, and I don't know if it was Kipre or whoever it was when he literally put one of the West Brom defenders on his arse. And he was like 1 foot taller than him, and he literally puts him on the floor, shrugs the other one off, turns him, and I was like, if he scores this, it'll be and it was like against Huddersfield when he got through. I thought, if he scores this, and he's had 2 nearly moments now where I would have just loved the laugh out of him. But I'm loving him. I think he showed that he can get him behind. He showed that he's got the strength. And I thought in a crowded box with very physical defenders, I thought he took his header really well. And I think you bang on when you say if we can provide him with the service. I think he needs a bit of refining. I think he's still a bit raw around the edges. But I think give him the chances, get the players around him. I think he could be a really, really good signing, and one we might look back on and think we actually got him for a bit of a snip. Because the signs so far for me are really, really positive, and he could have had a really good brace yesterday. So I'm loving Laugh. Yeah, he's in my present place.
Yeah, I live, laugh, love Manny as well. Like, he's just great, and he really is. I think we just need to keep building this team around him going forward. Like, what is nice to see though is that it looks like strikers will probably score goals in this team. Well, under Michael Carrick anyway, his teams do create chances, and hopefully he can start putting them more away. We can start climbing up the table. Things can get a little bit better. But yeah, for me, Emmanuel Latif is definitely in my present place this week. Dana, who is in yours?
Isaiah Jones for his display off the bench. I thought, honestly, it was what you want to see from Jones. I will say as well, the chance that he put on a plate for Silvera's miss against Huddersfield is, again, exactly the place that you want him to be in. Obviously, I wasn't on last week's pod because I was depressed after the England women's game, but I probably would have mentioned that on there, so I'll mention it this week. If we get Isaiah Jones into the right areas, then he can be a really good weapon in our inventory. And I think that yesterday he was really good. He was direct. He had that chance where there was literally nobody around him, but he took on one of the West Brom players and had a much better shot than what I was anticipating. And then he hit the post as well. He was really bright in the build up to the awarding of the penalty. So I think his display was really positive, and I really want to see that more often from Jones. So yeah, I'm backing him. I want to see that more from Izzy, but it was a really good cameo off the bench, so he gets in my present place.
Do you think he goes back into the 11, Dana? No. I mean, that was a really good performance. This bit of form now does create plenty of opportunities for players to come in and take advantage of that. We've seen it last year, but what do you think? Do you think Isaiah Jones could make his way back into the 11 now?
Potentially, but I'd probably keep things as they are right now. I think that he's a good option off the bench until he probably puts in, he keeps up these cameo performances. If it continues and, he comes off the bench in the next game and performs well, then there's a shout. But I think for now, I'd probably stick with what it is between McGree, Silvera, and potentially Force, because Force gives you the option of a shooter. He's probably guilty of being a little bit selfish sometimes from the wing, cutting inside and shooting when really he should probably pass. There were a few examples of that in the game against Huddersfield. I suppose it just depends on what you want. But if we do play Jones, I think we've got to play him as that old-fashioned winger, get to the byline and cut it back, because he's very good at doing that. He's not really somebody that... I feel like Jones needs space in behind. He needs those 1-2s, and he needs that ball down the line that he can run onto. If he is stuck and there's somebody, there's someone marking him in front of him, I just don't think he's the type to take them on and get past them. We did see that when he first broke through, but I think his strength is more running into that space, getting to the byline and cutting it back. So I would like to see him integrated back into the first team, or the starting 11 at some point. But I think for now, keep him on the bench, keep the cameos, or hopefully the good cameos come in, and then go from there.
Okay, then. Well, let's move on to podcast questions now, because every week you get the chance to send us a question via Twitter, Boro_breakdown, email borobreakdown@hotmail.com, or by joining our Telegram chat with over 370 Boro fans, chatting everything but Boro. We actually were talking about Boro yesterday, so that's a one-off for that chat. But the first question is from Neil. He says, do we need 2 ball winners in the middle of the park to accommodate the 4 forwards and attacking fullbacks? Does taking Hackney out of the team and replacing him with a new ball winner alongside Howson make us more likely to win games? Matt, sorry, I'm so used to speaking to Tom. I'm so sorry, Matt.
That's a compliment. It's a compliment.
No, it's not. It's
Shade.
Shame on me. Shame on me. But yeah, do you think we need 2 ball winners in the centre of the park to win games?
No, I wouldn't say 2, and I wouldn't take Hackney out either. I think we still need to have either a Hackney or a Barlasser on, or at least in one of the 2 midfield positions. I think if we swap to a 4-3-3, then maybe you could do something with the balance of the 3 midfielders there. But I think while we're playing with a 2 in the middle, it's still worth us having that one creative midfielder who, can get in the pockets of space and can create, whether it's Hackney or Barlasser. So I still think the benefits that they bring us and the pros they bring us is worth having them in the team. I think maybe it is on the other side of midfield where, we currently have Howson, for example, where that's the position we need to maybe focus on more. So just getting a more defensive midfielder alongside a Hackney or a Barlasser to maybe sit a bit deeper and protect the back 4. So I wouldn't go all the way and say we have to replace both with defensive midfielders, but I think definitely one of them needs to be.
Okay. The next question is from Daniel. He says, has the quick success of last season gave us a false belief in how capable this squad and manager can be in the short term? Dana, what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think to a degree, yes, it's obviously raised the expectations. I think last season was a quick and pretty much unexpected ascent, but I think it's also worth noting that it wasn't just a quick fling. This was something that lasted about 4 months, which for a new manager, and especially a manager that is new to management, is very good and also very rare. So, let's be honest, it's definitely altered expectations. Do we need to adjust those? Probably, but then I do see why people do have really high expectations of us based on last season. So there's still a lot to learn about this team. And I will say there's still a lot to learn about Carrick too, because he hasn't had to endure a significant tough patch. Obviously, we did finish last season poorly, although again, as I said on last season's podcast, it was influenced by injuries and really shoddy refereeing decisions in terms of results. But this is probably the significant sticky patch that he needs to negotiate through, and I think we'll learn a lot more about Carrick once we come out at the end of this.
Okay, and then the final last question is from Dave. He says, for 3 of the goals, the nearest player to the goal scorer was Dale Fry. He seems very reactionary so far this season, has he become too timid? Is this system and style killing our centre backs? Matt, what do you think? Do you think Dale Fry's become too timid?
I'm not sure. I think it's both harsh to put the blame on Dale Fry. I think as an individual, because I think a lot of the goals we've conceded have just been collectively being poor defensively, and obviously we've spoke about the midfield as well. So I think it's harsh to maybe put the blame on just Fry, but I also think at the same time he does maybe evade criticism a bit more than other defenders would because he's one of our own. And are we seeing the full potential of Dill Fry? Are we seeing the defender we thought we had when he first brought through at the team? I'm not too sure. My personal opinion is we could improve in that area with a better ball playing defender. I think Fry gets himself into good positions and does make crucial blocks at times, but I think there's more to the weaknesses of Boro's team at the minute than just Dill Fry. I think it's a collective, because I think on paper him and Lenihan should be one of the more reliable and solid, steady central defensive pairs in the whole league. So I think there's definitely more to why Boro are conceding the goals we are, and how we're conceding them than just Dill Fry.
I'm going to jump to his defence here because I do think Dill Fry is our best defender. I think he's, as with the whole team, I don't think we should just take this as an individual, but the whole team are going through a really rough patch at the moment. And I don't think anyone is, but I wouldn't write Dill Fry off. I think he's still a very good player, he's still a very good defender. And I think we'll see him improve, and it'll coincide with the team improving too.
Yeah, for me on Fry as well, I think that he does lack the ball playing side of things, which I feel like is being coached out of him because of previous managers. You know, when you work under Tony Pulis, you work under Neil Warnock, Chris Wilder to some extent as well. You know, you don't really play out from the back too much, and he's been taught for like the last 4 or 5 years, just hoof it, just put it in the channel still, you know, like no nonsense, just do that. And I feel like when he did break through under, you know, well, did slightly break through under Karanka a little bit, we were playing a bit more of a possession based style. He's probably brought up into that as well. I just feel like it's being kind of coached out of him. So can we coach that back into him? Save ourselves a bit of cash, because we're going to have to get a ball playing centre half. In my opinion, I think we do need that. But yeah, I just think we just need to keep improving in that area. And just in terms of like him being like the nearest player to the goal scorer, that's probably not the problem. I think the when you see goals normally, it's normally like 2 or 3 actions before that where the biggest problem actually is, where that leads to a goal, because that is kind of the keystone, and it's a domino effect from there to why things happen. So he's not always the problem there, but it is what it is. And then the final question, it was from Telegram, but it's from Tom, and he says, "What's happening with Alain Gilbert? Why isn't he getting a look?" So Alex Gilbert, yeah, he hasn't actually featured at all yet. He's had a few injuries, of course. You know, he hasn't really had much of a preseason. And I feel like he hasn't had the chance to kind of break in yet. But it's interesting, though, isn't it, Alex Gilbert? Because like, I thought he'd be at least featuring to some extent, even when games don't really matter too much anymore. But he hasn't featured at all. So it's a strange one. What, any of you guys have an opinion on that in terms of Alex Gilbert? Like, why we haven't seen him? Do you think he might go on loan maybe before the window's out?
To be honest, what I was thinking when you mentioned injuries is that it was a hand injury, and then Ralph van den Berg also has a hand injury. So what's going on with these hand injuries at Middlesbrough? I think Van den Berg had a dislocated thumb or something. But yeah, it's interesting with Gilbert because we literally don't even know what position he's playing. Sorry, there's a fly. We don't even know what position he's actually considered in because he's not played. So is he because his position in terms of looking on transfer marks is that he can play up front, he can play as a number 10, and he can play on the wing, on left wing. So like, we don't even know what his position is in the eyes of Carrick because we just haven't seen him. So yeah, another case of more questions than answers at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what will happen with him, to be honest. It is what it is. But let's move on. Let's talk about the Football Content Awards, because this year we are going for Best Podcast in the EFL at the FCAs. Last season, you know, we got to the finals. We were very, very close, but we just didn't make it. But we were one of the best podcasts in the country. So thank you very much for voting for us, of course. And how do you vote for us? You go to Dana. How do you vote for us, Dana? How do you vote for us?
Yeah, well, you vote for us by heading to www.footballcontentawards.com/voting. Click the drop-down menu or scroll down to Best Podcast, type our name in there, and then that is literally all you need to do. Click vote, it'll register, and then that is literally it. So it is so simple. It takes about 5 seconds. You don't need to fill out any other category. Just head to the Best Podcast category, the Championship version, type the Boro breakdown, and then Bob's your uncle and Fanny's your aunt.
Thanks for that.
Welcome.
Thanks. But yeah, the links of that will be in the podcast description and in our YouTube comment as well. So please do vote for us. That'd be great. But let's move on to Bolton now. Boro go to the tough sheet, which absolutely cracks me up. But the tough sheet community stadium. The last time we went there, Ashley Fletcher scored 2 and Boro won 2-0. They are actually 3rd in League One. I'm crying at that name. I feel like poor Bolton fans, they've really went down from the Reebok Stadium to tough sheet, it's tough shit. But anyway, 3rd in League One, 4 wins out of 6. The only defeat coming at home to Wigan with a loss 4-0. They do set up in a 3-4-1-2 formation, and they're a heavily possession-based side. They've averaged the highest in League One this season with 67%. The average for 1.77 goals per game, which is the highest in League One, and they also are high for biggest chances created. So a team that creates plenty of chances. The XG against is 1.5, so it's just slightly over what they're expecting, because they normally expect about 0.8. So they are giving away a couple of chances or conceding chances where they probably shouldn't be. But they do try and win the ball back in the central area of the pitch, and they'll try and spray the ball out wide. And that's where they're going to create most of the chances. They'll try and get the ball out wide and get the ball in the box for Victor Adebayo. I can never say his name. Adebayo. And he's got 4 goals this season. He's part with Dion Charles up top. And also, just a name from a blast from the past from previous podcast from last year where we were after goalkeepers, Nathan Baxter is actually in goal for Bolton.
I remember tweeting at him after one of our games last season saying, "Do you fancy coming to Boro?" No, he's in League One. I think I cursed him.
Yeah, you've been malt cursed, absolutely. But yeah, the biggest space of the game, if you're playing against a side who plays 3-4-1-2, is in that half space. So will Boro hopefully try and play in that central areas again? Who knows? You want to try and get a 2v1 on the wing backs because you've got one player on each side. So that creates a load of space in behind for you to try and create those 1-2s and get up the pitch and hopefully score for Boro. But it's a tough game. It's quite ironic as well, that we're playing Bolton. Our worst start of the season, or 3 or 4, now playing Bolton in the Carabao Cup, which, the Carling Cup. Just interesting, isn't it? So book your tickets for a final in February. But what's your predictions, guys? Matt, do you think we'll win, lose, draw, match abandoned? What do you think?
I'm going to back us to get a narrow win. I think we have to. I think we have to put out a strong team. I think we have to try and build confidence and get some form of a win on the board, I think, for the players and for the fans as well. I think if we were to lose this game, I'd probably stay off Twitter for at least a week. I dread to think what would happen if we lost to Bolton. But it's a banana skin. It is a banana skin because they're one of the favourites to get up from League One. And if you were to put the pyramid together, there's only technically 5 league places between us. So, looking at it from that point of view, it's a bit of a banana skin, this one, and I think we will have to we'll have to be pretty close to our best, I think, to ensure we get a result from this. So I think we will narrowly get a result, but it will not be a walk in the park. So fingers crossed, because we'll be facing another Boro Twitter meltdown otherwise, which no one wants. No one wants that. Again.
I know, I can't bother with it anymore. But Dana, what do you think?
Well, I've already logged out of the Boro Breakdown socials, so I'm clear of part of it anyway. But when it comes to the game, it's Bolton. I got to go 2-1 Boro, haven't I, because of the cup final. I think Rodgers will score a brace. And for them, I think Dion Charles will score. So yeah, 2-1 Boro, Rodgers brace. It's going to happen.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to go with Joseph Job and Paul attendant for Boro. 2-0 up in the first 7 or 8 minutes. And then I can just see Kevin Davies scoring. I don't know why. Just going to say that as well. But I hopefully think we win. it's a tough place to go. And if we shit out someone at the tough sheet, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm gonna
go.
Yeah, I think these are great chances, and I feel they won't make changes. They'll want to keep progressing. I think we will make changes, so it's going to be interesting to see how we set up. But I think we might just have enough. I think it'd be. I actually do think it'd be 2-1. But funny enough. So, but guys, thank you very much for joining me as always. The listeners and the viewers, thank you very much for watching and listening to us. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. There's a lot of you subscribed and you still haven't given us a 5-star rating, so please do. That helps us get found, chatted, and all that fun stuff. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to the Boro Breakdown YouTube channel. But Boro have had their worst start of the season since 2003, 2004. Now must go to Bolton to get their season going. It's the parallels. We need a right back as well. Can Danny Mills play again? Who knows? But this has been the Boro Breakdown podcast. And you know what? You can't beat a bit of Carlin Darling of the Boro Breakdown podcast.